Part 2. So after he was arrested, he said he was given permission to leave the state and move back to Missouri. But then he came back to Corpus Christi because he wanted to visit friends and family, and he was just there visiting. And this is the part about where the police said they found ammo on him. So he said it wasn't like that. It wasn't ammo. He was at a shooting range, and he had a pistol. He rented an AR something, had a gun belt, holster. And this was his hobby, was he liked to shoot. And there had been a BOLO, a be on the lookout for. And there was a off-duty cop there at the shooting range who recognized him. And so she called for backup, and he was arrested again and released on bond. Now, the part about him having some sort of stuff that the cops thought maybe he was going to be impersonating law enforcement, and it was supposed to be like a sheriff's t-shirt or something that was reported in the news. He said he has no idea what they're even talking about with that part of it, that he didn't own a t-shirt. Like, he has no idea where that came from. So he, at some point during this, was given an ankle bracelet. But he says that his parole officer gave him permission to travel to Fort Worth to visit family. And I don't know if it was at this point or at another point, because again, it was really confusing and hard to keep track of everything. But he says that his PO, his probation officer, changed to a new one, and the old one forgot to inform the new one that he had permission to leave, and that the ankle bracelet went off 134 times. And then he was driving back to Corpus Christi, and he was pulled over again. And they said, we're not going to give you a ticket. We just have to run your license. And there was, lo and behold, a new warrant for his arrest that he was not aware of. And the previous bond had been revoked again. I think this is when he ended up spending the 3 months in jail, I think. So then sometime after that, he wanted permission to move to Oklahoma to be with family. And he says that his PO said, yeah, you can move to Oklahoma if you pay a $500 fee. And so he did. And I guess he was seen moving wearing scrubs. And he says, well, I was wearing scrubs because they're, comfortable, and I was moving, so I didn't want to mess up my clothes. After he got there, about 2 days later, his probation officer called him and said, you weren't supposed to move yet. Like, there's a waiting period. It has to be approved, that he says he didn't know anything about. So he says, oh shit, got in his car, drove back, went to court. I believe that brings us to December of last year, 2022, where he pled no contest on his attorney's advice. He did also mention that the police and the hospital lied in some of the reports. And so maybe that was why his attorney advised him to plead no contest. At any point, the case, according to him, is now closed. So lots of question about his history and his future and stuff. So I'm going to try to answer some of those. So he either was previously working at Walmart, or is now, I think it was in the past, in asset protection. He says this is just like a minimum wage job. He worked at in asset protection. Well, I never mentioned this in my previous video at all. And interestingly enough, someone who I don't know messaged me and said that they currently work there at that Walmart in asset protection, and that he owes Walmart thousands of dollars that he has stolen, which is ironic for someone that works in asset protection. I have no way of verifying that. That could very well not be true, but I'm just imparting all my information. So he says he's doing really well now. He's in a really good place in life. He's almost 19. He says he owns 2 businesses that he started. One is electronic wholesaler, and that he owns several Airbnbs, and that he was able to do that, to buy the Airbnbs and start his businesses due to a large inheritance from his grandfather. He's engaged. He says he has a great credit score. He recently bought a boat, a motorcycle, a used truck. He said he made $19,000 last month. and he is trying to decide his future. He said that he graduated with his GED at 16, finished his bachelor's degree in business marketing from Grand Canyon University at 18, which would have been earlier this year for him, and that he's now starting grad school and he's undecided in what he wants to do. He's leaning towards NP, a nurse practitioner, and he asked me several questions about that, like, do you have to be an RN first and all that? And so we talked about that. And he said, he's gun shy from doing anything in the medical field because of everything he's been through. But then he said maybe he'll go into healthcare administration. And I had to stifle a laugh. But that would be so apropos, right? So many people asked about his parents. So his parents are divorced. I said, how were you leaving the state and doing all this at 17? And he said the legal age in Texas is 17. So I looked it up briefly. I just Googled it, and it says it's 18, but 17 is the age of consent, which is different. Yes, he has seen the movie Catch Me If You Can. And he said, I can see why people would think that about me, but it's just not true. And that he really, really wants people to know the truth is that he is not a con artist, and that there was no intention of him like shooting up a hospital, and the whole ammo thing has been blown out of proportion. It was just him at the shooting range. And that, he's just a good guy and trying to decide his future now at almost 19 years old. And he asked me if I was, going to make another video after our conversation. And I said, yes. And I said, I never said your name in the first video because I generally make it a point to not share names most of the time. And I said, do you want me to not share your name again? And he said, no, share my name. If it was me and there were false stories about me out there, the last thing I would want is my name shared. I'll just say that. There's a whole lot more to it that we just don't have time to get into. Let me know if you want to know more about it. But there's a whole other story with a BMW that he purchased and forgery charges. And I guess there was a TikTok that I have not seen where like waving money around, but he said he was just going to buy an engagement ring and lots of crazy stuff. So there you go.